You're watching PEGRI TV, Rhode Island's public access channel.
The wheel is turning and you can't slow down. You can't let go and you can't hold on. You can't go back.
Hello, welcome back into my wheelhouse. It is April 22nd. The first of many playoff series has ended. Boston Celtics first to move on to the second round in the NBA playoffs. NFL draft is coming up this week. NHL playoffs are heating up. What are we, 3-3 Bruins? Yeah, you would know more than us two.
Yes, they're tied up, but they've lost a couple of games.
Are you nervous? Are you nervous? Are they going to win?
I'm worried about them. I'm worried about every Boston team right now.
Well, I mean, it's pretty.
But yeah, they had a trifecta yesterday where the Bruins, the Celtics, and the Red Sox all won. So
right.
that's
NBA. It's time to get rid of some of this dead weight and move on. You know.
I agree.
Yeah, the divisional playoffs isn't very good for the NBA. I think it actually loses.
A couple good series,
fans.
but
I think we can get right to it. We got plenty to talk about each series. I'm looking forward, maybe a preview. We'll see how we do.
Looking for no duplicates today.
You did very good last week. Well, one of your best spin performances.
Oh, thank you, sir.
All right, top 10 players in the playoffs so far.
Ooh.
I was talking with Mike this past weekend about my updated list for my top 100 or whatever so players. On that list, I still had LeBron at number one.
which was
but that was
hard to understand.
It was contingent on that spot is completely available based on the performance of the other people that are in that top tier.
I agree with the tier.
So my top five so far, and then we can get
in
into
playoffs.
Yes, in playoffs. So LeBron is obviously not in contention at all. Is I got Giannis 1, Harden 2, reflecting my regular season MVP selections. Giannis has been more dominant in less minutes. His team has been, even though against a lesser opponent, handling them more uniformly across start to finish of the game. Then I got Durant 3, Kawhi 4, and Lillard 5. And then I got some more guys, but let's break down the top fives before we get to the rest of them.
I had to go with the series that I'm watching, and I'm actually watching these players. So I didn't even take Giannis because the series is so lot to call him the best player in the playoffs when he virtually doesn't have to play 25 minutes or really have to do that much. To me, the most impressive guy so far has been Joel Embiid. I know he's been injured. He seems like he's a monster. And when I watched that last game where what's Allen's first name?
Jarrett.
Where Jarrett Allen is actually playing real well, and he's dunking the ball all over the place, and he looks like he's going to be an all-star. And then Embiid comes in, and then he looks like the worst player on the court because Embiid's on the court, and Embiid dominates. And then down the stretch in that game when they needed it and Embiid came back in off the bench, it was like 6 straight possessions where they went to Embiid every time, and every single time he produced with all sorts of stuff. You know, a little shot here, spins there, all that stuff. Blocked 6 shots, had 32 points and 16 rebounds and 7 assists and 6 blocked shots. I really think he's the star right now. It's too bad that he's hobbled.
Based off that fourth game alone, I think he absolutely deserves contention in the top 5. And based off his ability and his talent, he could be the best player in the NBA by the end of this playoffs if he can string together some consistency of health and his dominance continues. His per 36 numbers, he's averaging like 37 and 20 with like over 5 blocks, but he's only playing, it's just because he's only playing like 28 minutes, 29 minutes a game.
But it's amazing he can still dominate when he's definitely got some problems.
His knee is sore. He's got a sore knee.
Yeah, he's incredible. It's really sad that they didn't employ load management like other teams did. Like he played his first 29 games.
Yeah.
And at the time we were like,
high minutes.
At the time we were like, this is awesome. Like maybe he's like fully well, but like they were actually hampering his ability to be fully well.
And he played 8 games after the break.
And I was listening to The Ringer, and they were like hammering the Sixers for like letting them do the whole All-Star weekend. But
who cares about that?
I really don't think that's
it's obvious.
Physically demanding.
I mean, it's obvious the game 4 Embiid was much more dominant from start to finish than the game 2 Embiid. So I think maybe that 1 game rest was something that helped, you know?
I guess. But he was questionable for game 3 too. Right. You weren't sure he was going to play.
Let's look at the fact that Philly was booing Ben Simmons at the start of this series too, and then Ben Simmons all of a sudden he hit another level.
Yeah, we can talk about that.
Something clicked for him.
The rest of your top 5.
My second one was Kawhi. I think Kawhi is just, we can talk about that when we get to Toronto too, but the difference he brings to that team in terms of them being able to overcome a defeat compared to when they had Lowry and DeRozan.
Yes.
Now with Siakam and Leonard, it's a whole different ball game there when you're looking at that. My third one is Lillard. I think Lillard, that spree he had yesterday where he scored 15 points in 6 minutes in the third quarter and buried OKC, game over virtually. The range that these guys are showing, I mean, he's comfortable at 28 or 30 feet.
Yeah, he's shooting like 70% from 30 feet.
He's comfortable at 40 feet.
He can really fire.
That's great.
I think Kyrie has been exceptional in terms. I think that he's made some changes in his game in terms of knowing when to go into his ISO better, picking his spots for isolation better, facilitating more. I think he's brought a lot to the table on that team that's intangible that he really wasn't bringing before. I think he's been impressive to me.
I think
Kyrie.
He's
Defensively,
playing
off the
within
boards, blocking
himself.
shots.
He's playing as a team player, and he's playing as a leader.
Yes, he's more integrated.
He's more of a leader on the floor, and it's the Kyrie that we've wanted to see
Nice
all
fast
year.
break, left-hand bounce pass and a break.
I didn't have Kyrie in my top 10, but that's not because his ceiling doesn't warrant being in the top 10, but it's more so the success of the Celtics in these 4 games in this sweep against Indiana has been indicative on whose night it was, a different player stepping up to the plate depending on the night.
Yep.
And although his maybe his game 3 where he drops 37, and that was phenomenal, or depending on what 6-minute stretch you're watching, whether it's game 1 where he was putting on a complete, he was putting them into a disarray with his ball handling and his ability to score and at the hoop. But on other nights, he's going 2 for 6 in the first half, and then he's not really needing to push because Tatum and Gordon are providing that scoring punch out otherwise. So I didn't have him in the top 10.
Yeah,
but it's understandable. It's understandable.
The Celtics are playing maybe like top 5 team ball right
Yes.
now. Like
Pretty good.
they're kind of in their prime for the year.
Change.
So.
And then the fifth one, I picked Siakam.
I love it. I
just
got him
really
9.
think.
I got him 9.
When
I
I
got him
look
in my
at
top 10.
Siakam and Leonard and what they've done to stabilize that team in relation to how DeRozan and Lowry were the stars before, Siakam and Leonard, they stabilized that team completely to prosper after a bad performance. And I think Siakam's been great.
He's become a superstar in front of our eyes.
Looks like it.
He's got such good handle.
So
he's got the
fast.
jump shot that you have
crazy
to
fast.
Transition.
you have to respect his jump shot, but he's also got the quick first step.
Yeah.
He's also got the moves down low where he can do like the fake and the up and under. And he had Terrence Ross just completely like falling all over himself, and Ross was kind of made these looks like
He's so long.
he had like so many and ones, and Ross was just like
You're a top 5.
that's very similar. I mean, obviously I have Lillard on there, but I still have to go Giannis and Kevin Durant and James Harden.
Yep.
Three of the most
top 3.
unguardable players in the NBA, and they're just really turning it on when they have to. And
Okay, how about the second?
There's a lot of like uncompetitive matchups.
That's what's hard for me to pick those guys.
Round.
Not that they're not going to be the best player in the playoffs, but they haven't had to be as good as they have to be.
Okay.
I had a
The
couple
Jazz are a terrible matchup, for the Rockets. The
Yeah, but
Rockets.
that's-
It's
I wanted to
easy
give some
peasy.
praise to a couple of guys that I'm just seeing
go ahead. You're
exceptional
6 through
performances.
10.
One of them was Derek White, and what you've seen with and Shea brought him to the
Okay.
table with us last time, but that 26 points and a half was just an amazing performance, and certainly Lou Williams in the 31-point comeback, he was as good as I've seen coming off the bench doing that, and then Karis LeVert with Brooklyn has also been something special out there. Those 3 guys, and again, you can talk about Harden and Giannis real easy and all those guys, and Steph Curry.
It makes them like individual game X factors, but I don't know if
Yeah.
it makes them like top 10
Yeah.
greatest players
Probably
in the
not. I
playoffs.
just want to LeVert maybe.
LeVert came onto the scene and was a big factor in game 4. Before that, it was
Yeah.
kind of more so sprinkling in that 3-headed snake with those guard rotation. It wasn't necessarily him over the others, but I
I
agree
still
with
think
you.
it's fair to like balance like
Right.
an
An
game
actual-
in and game
right.
out like great
I
players.
hear what you're
And
saying.
I just wanted to give compliment to the guys.
And even when Derek White was cold offensively in the last
played
game,
well.
he still was playing at elite defensive level. But my 6 through 10 is I got Jokic at 6, and I feel like
That's a good pick.
he's been getting a lot of flack for his play for some reason, maybe just because they came in and they got a loss early, and everyone was saying, oh my God, the Denver Nuggets, they were a 2 seed, what a joke, they're a fake, they're probably going to lose. Now it's 2-2, they stole a game baback from San Antonio, in San Antonio, one of the tougher places to play, especially in playoffs. And Jokic is averaging a pretty steady 20-point triple-double. His ability to really affect the game in so many different ways has been great, and he's such a great, surprisingly, a great defensive matchup against the San Antonio Spurs team. So they haven't been able to expose Jokic's weaknesses, And I understand that 2 losses to a 7-seed Spur team that isn't as strong in terms of personnel as we were expecting.
Want to just talk about that series?
No, I want to do the thing.
wait.
But I think that Jokic absolutely deserves it. And then I got Embiid.
It's hard not
We
to talk
talked
about
it.
that series when
We
you
got
talk about
Embiid, and then
Jokic.
I got Steph. I had Siakam, and then I wanted to give some love to C.J. McCollum, who's been absolutely fantastic.
Definitely,
stepping up with the loss of Nurkic.
Because really, Lillard had all his points in that first 6 minutes of the second half, and McCollum was steady right through the whole thing.
CJ's
And he had some
averaging
big
27 a
shots last
game.
night
Who
when-
else was in your top
I
10?
have a very similar list, but I do have Ben Simmons on that list.
He's one of my
and
cross-outs.
for me, he's earned it because he's just really put his foot on the gas. And I think he's also one of the most unguardable players. When he plays aggressively and as an alpha dog, he's really tough
But
to
I have
beat.
to question, I mean, Shea was absolutely right about him getting aggressive and playing, but why does he revert so often to coming off the ball and stepping up? You would think that once that happened with him in game 2, that he would have kept going the same way, but he really hasn't. He still
He's too
takes himself
apathetic.
out of the offense.
He's too apathetic.
No.
Doesn't care enough. All right, we can spin it.
Well,
Probably bleed into plenty of conversation.
he plays hard for somebody that
So the
doesn't care.
Boston Celtics, as we said, we've swept the Indiana Pacers. A physical series, but when it came down to late in the games, late in the fourth quarters, Indiana's lack of offensive contribution from 1 to 5 in their lineup really hurt them. They had lots of mistakes, turnovers, missed shots, bad decisions. The Celtics were able to persevere. We were able to mount some good comebacks in a couple of the games, which was promising earlier in the season, or even more recently in the season when we're down 12 points with 5 minutes left. That's not a game we're going to come back from. So there's promising signs from this series moving forward as an appetizer towards a complete different opponent in the Milwaukee Bucks that we're going to be facing now. They played tonight. They're probably going to close out the series. They're up 3-0. But similarly on the other side, I understand a lot of people are saying, oh, this Boston Celtics team they're probably asleep now that they played a terrible team in Indiana. But do they not
that's what
realize?
Sloan was saying last week.
Do they not realize that?
I wasn't saying that
more
they
or less.
were. I was saying that I was worried that they would be.
I think it's something.
But
there's
the
something to be said about that.
Milwaukee Bucks are playing the even worse team. The Detroit Pistons are the
And
worst.
and that is something to be said
Right.
about that, too.
So
who's more prepared?
Right, the Detroit Pistons are easily the worst team in all of the playoffs, and it should be expected, and that's what they deserve as the number 1 seed overall. So in terms of just looking through goggles, framing this upcoming matchup that we have, I'm hearing that we might not play until the weekend, which will be nice.
No earlier than Saturday.
No earlier than Saturday.
They're not
That's what I
allowed
heard.
to play before Saturday.
I thought that they might be able to play earlier, but they're not.
That's
Not
the
until Saturday.
earliest.
That's good. That's good for extra rest. That gives another week to knock off of Marcus Smart's timeline.
He says it's 2 weeks before he
says,
runs.
You're right. Yeah,
And he said it himself. That's
probably
going to be 2
out.
He's not playing in this
But,
series.
How could you see some maybe lineup changes? We saw last playoffs, we started Semi Ojeleye. Could you see something like that happen? And just overall, what are you excited for upcoming against Milwaukee?
I mean, they do play Shemi a lot on Giannis, so I'm sure we'll see a bunch of him. But I think the Marcus Smart thing has been a blessing and a curse because they kind of got their top 8 solid rotation out there and really playing well together. And Gordon Hayward has played pretty well, and I think they've played good team basketball. I mean, of course, there's the flip side of the coin where you could say they were down in 3 of these games. They were down at halftime.
Yes.
And there was games I think 3 out of 4 games, the Pacers were kind of in it towards the end of the game, which I don't think there are many other top tier teams that would let the Pacers in it, in the fourth quarter of these games. But overall, I'm more enthused than I am,
Yes,
worried.
I would agree.
And I'm happy with the overall product. I think they're playing as a team, and I think they are going to give the Bucks some trouble.
Morale is high.
Yeah.
I think my look at it is that they're playing like the number 4 seed. They're not playing as good as Philadelphia. They're not playing as good as
I
Toronto.
think we're playing better than Philadelphia for sure.
I don't know if they are playing, but if
A couple
Embiid's
weeks ago, I
healthy,
thought maybe
if
the
Embiid's
Celtics would get
healthy,
swept by the Bucks. I think they could beat the
You've seen
Bucks
Philadelphia
now.
win a game strong without Embiid, with Simmons stepping up. You've seen Harris play real well. We're talking about the Celtics here now. We'll get to Philadelphia, but I think Philadelphia is actually playing better than Boston is right now. I like that how hard Indiana played, and I think going forward that analysis is correct. That preparing them for the next round compared to what Detroit has done with Milwaukee, maybe. But realistically, you've got to say Indiana did not have a go-to guy, and not having a go-to guy, there's no way down the stretch they were going to win games because you thought it was going to be Bogdanovic, but he really didn't come through in the clutch like they expected him to. And then there's nobody else. Milwaukee's got serious
Yeah.
go-to guys. So now you got to be faced with that. I thought the last game it was it was good to see that Kyrie and Al could shoot 25% from the field.
Right.
And then they could still establish a win when you had Morris and Hayward shoot 70% off the bench to compensate for the 25%. I thought that was good to see. I agree with Sloan on the 8-man rotation. 8-man rotation plus Tice. And what your brother Logan was saying yesterday, where he wished that some other guys got less minutes so that Tatum would get more. But Tatum got 36 minutes yesterday, so he's actually getting more minutes because Marcus Smart is not there. Reality is we're not going to have Marcus Smart for the next series. Milwaukee's also not going to have Malcolm Brogdon from what I can see there. That's kind of a trade-off.
I see them kind of
their
being
best
right there.
defensive
They look.
guard,
They,
so.
well, Bledsoe. I think they're probably on the same trajectory. Those two guys.
I
in
wonder
return.
why, with the minutes that could have been available there, that Shemi didn't play at all. He
Yeah, I
didn't
thought
play
that was weird.
1 second. He did not step on the floor to that series against Indiana. Why wouldn't you pick some spots and at least get him game ready for what's coming next, unless he really isn't going to play very much against Milwaukee.
I don't know. I think that Brad is very willing to adjust and fly, and I think that he has trust in his players so that he can be thrown into a situation or thrust into a situation where they weren't playing any minutes before, and maybe game one, I would not be surprised at all. I feel like I'm actually like maybe expecting Semi to start. Maybe
Just come out, yeah.
I honestly am. Like
sick him Giannis.
When you hear Brad talk about Giannis, especially in terms of them in a playoff scheme, he talks often about he's going to get calls early. Giannis gets calls early. He's one of the biggest foul drawers in the league. It's like Embiid is one, and I think he's another one of the people in the top 5. And you need players that you can spend those fouls on that can rough them up, that can maybe even draw some fouls on the opposite side of the floor. So I think that should be interesting for that. You're saying, in contrast to Indiana, how Indiana it was very obvious the dearth of a late game score option that this team had or didn't have with Oladipo out, and how that it'll be a complete opposite for Milwaukee. While it's true that Milwaukee obviously has more in that department than Indiana, I still don't think that this is a team that we need to be like desperately worried about a specific creator late in game. Middleton has ability to create offensively, but that he hasn't proven to be a late game scorer. His clutch.
It actually would have been Brogdon.
Right.
Brogdon
His clutch statistics in terms of shooting aren't that strong. Yeah, obviously Giannis is a freak of nature, but in terms in terms of late game, you can clog the paint and you can force him into a shot. I think that in comparison to playing a Philly late in a game or a Toronto late in a game, even though Milwaukee is the superior team to those two, I think that in terms of a late game performance, I trust the Celtics defense to be able to overcome the Milwaukee Bucks. If we're gonna win against this series, we need to limit their scoring in the first half and in the third quarter, because if they get a strong lead, I don't know if we can etch that out. And if it's a close game, I'm confident that the Celtics can pull the game out.
What we've seen against Milwaukee is that Giannis is obviously a threat.
Yes.
Whatever time of the game is. We've seen Middleton play real well.
He plays good against the
Celtics. So I consider him a go-to guy as soon as hitting a shot.
Mirotich's health is also up in.
He had 14 the last game.
Mirotic, but I still didn't think.
I don't know whether, but it's nice to have Brogdon because Brogdon has won some games against the Celtics. I wish we were playing Philly because who's the villain? Is it Bledsoe? Not really anymore because it's not the same.
Well, that matchup
I want
is
a villain. Is it going to be Brook Lopez? I want to take down. If they're going to call fouls, hit him hard the first couple times he comes in. Deck him. Take him right down.
So
I want that kind of a series.
There's things I'm worried about big time. I'm happy that the Celtics are rebounding. They out-rebounded the Pacers in the game 2 and game 3.
Pacers go to the boards.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Young and Sabonis and
Turner.
Yeah,
They're
they hit the boards.
I'm happy with their three-point defense. I think for the most part they were able to limit the Pacers, and they need good three-point defense and rebounds to play against the Bucks. But the problem is they're missing free throws. They missed 9 free throws in game 3. They missed 7 free throws in game 4. And they're also not playing well defensively on the interior. They got a lot of points in the paint they're giving up, and that's Giannis's game.
Yeah.
And if they have to double him up, then they're going to find open three-point shooters, and then that's where they're going to start.
We've seen
really
Tatum
struggling.
raise his level of play.
Yes, I agree.
And that's nice. I mean, he is now just looking long-term with the Celtics. The way Brown and Tatum have played, their value is going way up again. And
Jaylen Brown's amazing this
it's so that you're seeing those guys, their level of play is really risen really well. I hope Al Horford's okay. He hasn't played well since I think he was 6.
can definitely
he was
tell
4
that,
for 14 yesterday.
that our young guys in Jalen and
4 for
Tatum,
19. He was 4 for 19. That's a lot of
it
shots.
was a weird game, but Jalen and Tatum are definitely playoff players. In 2 seasons in a row, we see them rise their play once they get into the postseason when the lights are brighter. They come to perform, and that's exciting. The concerns that I do have in the first aspect of the playoffs against Indiana, you were touching on the things that we did well, which will translate further on in terms of rebounding, which is absolutely promising, and defending the three-point line, which is great. Opposite side of the ball, I thought that we had a stronger sense of camaraderie and chemistry, and you could tell that, as I was saying, the morale is higher. The ball movement was great, and we were moving the ball
Kyrie's much better.
at sometimes to a fault almost, and we were overpassing and
Well,
waiting
they were
to
also
drive.
turning the ball over a lot. That's
Yeah,
why.
they were.
So,
They had a lot of turnovers.
what's interesting is if you look at the archetype
A lot of offensive fouls.
of Indiana versus Milwaukee, Indiana runs players off of the three-point line much more often than Milwaukee does. Milwaukee yields many more three-point attempts. I believe they gave up the most three-point attempts in the league this season, and I think that means that there's more likely to be an open shot earlier, and there's more likely that we're not going to need to overpass, and that camaraderie and that chemistry to find the right shot is going to click better against the Bucks than it clicked against the Indiana Pacers, because there was more decisions needing to be made against the Pacers' defensive style than there will be needing to make against the Bucks. We saw the games that we played against the Bucks. We get up a lot of three-pointers on this team. It's because the way that they play defense, it's the way that we're shooting the ball.
Hayward shooting much better.
I'm confident that
Brown
we have a lot of everyone's shooting
Tatum
very well.
shooting decent.
But it should be
Once
very
in a while,
interesting.
Morris hits a shot.
Once in a while. Okay, so me and Mike and
God,
Logan
I
had a
double teamed yesterday.
Had a big, very
Double team. I got
disheartening
some support from my brother Jim and James, but
Marcus Morris, I thought that he played great in Game 4 in the closeout game. I thought that his big 2 3-pointers at the end of the game were fantastic, and that's the type of Marcus Morris that I want. I want the Marcus Morris that is going to be aggressive, that can play 10 minutes on Giannis in this series defensively, and then in offensive end of the game, he can space the floor and not be a creator. I don't want him to be a creator.
I know
I
you
want him
don't
to
agree
space
with
the
this,
floor.
Shay, but don't you think he plays the same all the time?
No, absolutely not. He plays different
do.
all the time.
I don't think so.
He plays different all the
I
time.
think his game is his game. That's how he plays. I mean, he might miss shots sometimes, but he's always looking for the same shots. He's always looking at the same
he forces it, and I think he takes shots that he shouldn't take. And I think other times he plays within himself, and he's much more effective.
I think he's always looking to take the same shots.
I think
there are shots that he takes.
Sometimes he exploits his own role, and that's when he hurts the
the
team.
shot selection role is much better. And I love how Kyrie's facilitating. That might be because Smart's not there, and that he got and now that he's back on the ball, he's facilitating completely differently than he was when that team was the original starting 5.
Yes. Kyrie defensively has been fantastic, and
he's hustling,
carrying into this
chasing things
into this second round series. Eric Bledsoe is going to be a very interesting test case for the success of the Milwaukee Bucks. Last year we saw him completely crumble, and it really hurt
Who's
the
their
Bucks.
backup?
It's going to be
Brown.
George Hill.
George Hill. He
Hill's
hasn't played bad.
He's a strong backup. Strong backup point guard.
Hasn't played bad.
I think that it's going to be interesting to see. We saw some highlights just in terms of steady play from Terry in games 3 and 4. He's still a little bit inconsistent, but he was promising. He was promising there on the road, which was good. So going forward, that relationship and that play and that matchup is something I'm really interested to see.
Terry and Bledsoe?
Terry against Bledsoe.
Yeah, me too.
To see if
Full court pressure on Bledsoe.
No,
I'd love to see it.
That's what I want. I was about
full
to say
court
that.
pressure
I
on
want
Bledsoe.
Terry picking him up. I want Terry to try to just reinstill some type of mind game into Bledsoe to see if that's what it was last year. See if it was maybe a head trip by Bledsoe. Because this season he's played great and he's been an all defensive level caliber guard. And if Terry can get under his skin somehow, I think that could be huge for the Celtics.
I want to see us make a statement in that first game. I want to see us make a physical statement in that first game. That we've come to play, and you challenge them to play as hard as we're going to play. In terms of, like I said, take Giannis down. I mean, Shemi, you're only out there for a little bit. But if they're going to call a foul them hard. You know, get Brook Lopez upset. Agitate.
It's an important series for Brad because Brad's had such a tumultuous year, and Budenholzer, contrastly, has had such an amazing year. And he's got all of his players playing to their maximum efficiency.
I agree.
And I think it's really important for them to come out strong.
What's your pick for the series?
We're going to pick the Celtics.
Celtics, how many
I
guys?
just think that I don't know whether Milwaukee's really ready yet. I mean, Budenholzer, he might be ready to take them there, but they don't have that much experience at this level. Any of them really succeeding? I'd be more worried about Toronto, I think, than I would be. And myself, I'm more worried about Philadelphia. I know we've got the numbers against them, but I think if we can steal one in Philadelphia, that we can make this a pretty long series. And why not? Why not go with the Celtics?
So Celtics in.
I love Brad Stevens.
How
How
many
many
games?
games?
7.
7 games?
Oh, no, I got to say 6 because I don't think we're going to win the 7. 7. I'll stay with 7.
A week ago, I would have picked the Bucks to sweep the Celtics.
Really?
Now I'm
Yeah.
saying Bucks in 6 games.
Okay, good. Well, maybe we can win
But
that.
I think that is, from what we were talking about a month ago, I think
that's
that is
true.
a win for the
Things
Celtics. I
have
think
changed.
that's a good thing.
We were
to go
talking
into the
about
offseason
we were
with
talking
kind
about
of
that as
momentum.
well. Is
Because I have the Bucks going to the
right.
finals.
The
Yeah.
season is probably a success if we lose in a hard-fought series to the Bucks. Even through all the Rocky
Relative.
Mountain that we had from start of the season to end of season, from the expectations in the beginning of the season, if we put up a well-fought 7 games, so the Milwaukee Bucks, best team statistically in a very long time, based off of a lot of advanced statistics, best record in the league, and probably a finals usurper to the Cleveland Cavaliers. I think that the season won't be looked upon with frowned eyes. You know what I mean? I think that
I don't think anybody thought the Bucks were going to be this good.
No,
I think
we had
preseason I
agree.
said that the Bucks and Nuggets were my surprise team.
Right.
But I don't think any of us ever thought that they
And
would
what
be
was
this
Shea
efficient.
saying right there, I think realistically when we're looking at this team with the Celtics, quite possibly, and I said it before, is that this could be the last go-around with this bunch. And that I don't think if they lose a hard-fought series to Philadelphia that we're going to clean house because of how we played against Milwaukee, rather.
Celtics in 6.
What do you
Nice.
got?
Let's go with the
in 6?
Celtics. Let's
All
try
right.
it. Yeah, might as well keep rooting for. I love
like it.
Brad.
I hope you're right.
love Danny Ainge. I love Brad.
Toronto, Orlando, probably one of the quicker discussions. So after Mike
Yeah.
saw a Game 1 performance from DJ Augustine, he was like, "This guy's a
God.
superstar.
Well,
He's going
my
to carry
God.
them through."
Top 10 player in the playoffs.
Well, I thought he played well.
No, so Toronto.
Well, I never really liked it. I just compared to what they had
I know.
before.
Toronto's won 3 straight games since that Game 1. They're likely to close it out.
Oh.
I believe they play tomorrow night. They'll probably close out the series then. I think that this discussion should be about how formidable Toronto has looked and how you expect them to perform likely against Philadelphia in the next round due to how they played in this first matchup against the Orlando Magic.
And they're just so deep.
Yes.
And then Orlando just doesn't really have a go-to playoff scorer yet.
Yes.
I think they've got good bones. Like when
Yeah,
you
great
buy a house and you're like, it's got good bones. Like
They're going to lose some of the bones.
It's
though.
got a good future.
Take out.
Some of the bones are good.
I don't like their
replacement.
fans either.
Ooh, yeah.
I was
They're
reading
not ready.
an article about
not ready.
how Orlando's fans are really getting after it. And then I watch them play, and I'm
Not
like,
true.
I don't think they're really
play.
making that much noise.
Yeah, I think Toronto really set them in their place, and there's a big talent disparity there, and there's even a big experience disparity once you bring Leonard to the table, and it's showing. They've destroyed them at this point. I don't think Orlando can put up much of a fight at this point. And going forward, I really think if Embiid can play, I think Philadelphia is unbelievably dangerous. I just don't think anybody can handle that guy in that league.
So we're seeing the top 4 seeds, or depending on what seed they are, in all the conferences.
Yeah.
There kind of is just like a favorite, and they're kind of taking away the series. They're running away. Maybe it's either going to be a gentleman's sweep. In the Celtics case, it was a sweep. A lot of these series are a bigger chasm than we were expecting to begin. And for a lot of those teams, it can be concerning. And we talked about how the disparity between the talent between the Bucks and the Pistons and the Celtics and the Pacers should be something to be wary of going into the next round, where the talent disparity in the matchup is going to be so much drastically different. Where that is a little bit less concerning when I think about the Toronto Raptors versus the Orlando Magic. Even though that disparity in team is huge, I think what the best players on the Raptors have had in terms of a defensive look on the opposite side of the ball, I think that has prepared them well for what they're going to play against Philly. Kawhi Leonard and Pascal Siakam being defended by Jonathan Isaac and Aaron Gordon, who I cannot get enough of Aaron Gordon's defense in this series. I thought he's played some of the best defense he's ever played in his career, and he's been scoring at an above average rate just in terms of what his game is. And I think that Kawhi and Siakam having to deal with those two is going to prep them in above some, and they're going to be more than ready to handle the defensive matchup of James Ennis and Ben Simmons. And I understand Ben Simmons is an elite defender, and Ben Simmons will probably be playing some defense on Kyle Lowry. But I think that Siakam and Leonard are getting tested in the right ways against a team that is lesser. That'll translate to them being able to be more and more prepped.
When you look at how bad Detroit was playing going into this series and how bad Indiana played down the stretch, Orlando was playing really well.
Yes,
and Orlando steps on the court in Toronto and really plays harder than Toronto played in that first game. And then their response to that was really strong. I mean, Orlando shot 7 for 33 from three. I mean, even Gore, they need in the last game 7 for 33.
Yeah, well, they don't have any shooters, and the point guard slot continues to be their biggest issue. And Vucevic, has completely disappeared. And we've spoken about how Gasol, his fit is a little wonky, but defensively he has annihilated Vucevic. I think that this team looks like a powerhouse, and they were coming into the playoffs. They were my pick to make it to the finals, and I understand what you're seeing from Embiid, and I feel like a lot of your positivity about the Philadelphia 76ers is tied to the dominance of Joel Embiid, which is understandable. But what if Joel misses 2 games in a series against the Toronto Raptors and can only play 25 minutes?
What we saw in game 2, you give the ball to Simmons. I mean, Harris, Butler, and Redick are not bad players.
Yeah, I just
Redick is not the defensive liability that I thought he was going to be going forward in that series with Brooklyn.
That Philly team is going to have to adjust to play Raptors, not the other way around. Toronto's not going to need to adjust to play Philadelphia. They're going to be able to keep their same scheme and keep everything flowing the same way that it already is.
It's sad. The Magic shot 42% in that game, and their three-point shooting, half of that, 21%, 7 for 33.
7 for 33.
There's a lot of bricks.
They stink. It's unfortunate. Everyone has played well except for Vucevic. All right, Houston and Utah. This game is tonight, I believe. They'll probably close out the sweep. They're up 3-0. The one chance that Utah had to steal one when James Harden goes 0 for 15 in the first half, and they get a shot at the end of the game to tie it and send it into overtime. They couldn't pull it out, and James Harden, I think, how many points he scored in the fourth quarter? 13?
He had 3 hoops.
13?
He ended up with 22.
Even in the worst case offensive performance for the best player and likely second runner-up to MVP and James Harden, the Utah Jazz still couldn't get it done. Obviously, it is a horrible matchup for them. It probably would have been a tough matchup no matter who they played in the first round. But moving forward, we're going to see Houston hopefully be able to put up a big fight against the Golden State Warriors, who are likely to close out their series in a gentleman's sweep tomorrow as well. What you've seen from Houston's dominance, do you think that they have a real shot at upsetting the Warriors in the next round?
I'm not sure. I wish Harden would have played better in that game because I thought I'd be able to say Harden's at such a level that. But in that series against Utah, follow up on what you said first. I mean, every single matchup, whether you take Gordon and Tucker versus Crowder and Engels, or you take Paul versus Rubio, or Capella versus Gobert, or Harden versus Mitchell, they're superior in every single matchup against that team, which is dominating. I think that the way Gordon and Tucker are complementing their play, the play they're getting off the bench, that they are a threat for Golden State. I do think they are.
Yeah, I think they're better than they were this time last year.
The more seasoned.
And I think somehow
whole series.
James Harden might be even just as good as last year. Maybe a little bit better.
Yeah, his game's more diverse.
And that's pretty incredible because he had an MVP season. But like I said before, he's unguardable. They're trying to create defensive schemes to take Harden out.
Yes.
And it's just funny because he just adapts so well. It's like, oh, let's push him all the way to the right-hand side. And then all of a sudden, they just moved Capella a little bit, and he drives and either gets a wide-open alley-oop to Capella, or he just drives all the way to the left and the right. It's like he's just reinvents the wheel.
Why would you ever think you could play an NBA superstar all the way on the other side of the ball and consistently get away with that? You're going to need some sort of help and support from every other player on that court, and Utah's not getting it when they try it.
I think
it's just wide open for Harden to go.
He's a top 5 offensive player all time, I think.
It could be. I think that I wouldn't be surprised if Utah won a game tonight. And I think that as expected, their ability to produce offensively, that's another aspect of Rockets we haven't really given enough praise, is how they've performed defensively as of late. They've been completely locking down, especially the number 1 and number 2 options on the opposing team. We're seeing Donovan Mitchell is really trying to push himself on the game, and that's what the Jazz need him to do. but he is averaging 21 points, but it's on low efficiency, and you've been scratching your head at a lot of the plays that he makes. And then when you go down to what else they have, I think their second best offensive creator is probably Ingles, and they've made Ingles completely absent.
They've
in this
always
series.
had that issue that nobody else steps up, so then he tries to do too much,
Right.
and then they falter.
So I think moving into this next series against the Golden State Warriors, I think that they're going to need to rough them up. They're going to need a big series in terms of energy from Fareed, from Rivers, from all of their bench, from Daniel House.
Yeah.
I think every subsidiary player is going to need to play the best series of their life. And I think that James Harden will need to continue to be electric. And when they have a full team game and we have Chris Paul being healthy enough, I don't even think that Chris Paul needs to play at a superstar level for them to be able to beat the Warriors. I think that they just need consistent play from 1 to 9 in their rotation. They need James Harden to continue to be an MVP caliber player, and I think that they could do it. It's going to be really interesting to see. I think that it's going to be the best matchup. A lot of people are saying like whoever wins this upcoming matchup is probably going to win the finals, and I don't think that's anything to disagree with, but we'll see.
When you see a player as dominant as Harden, you don't expect it to be as good team chemistry. Oh, and then you see a personality like Paul. I wouldn't think this team would have good chemistry, but they
That's
do.
great. Yeah, they all
really
get
do with Capella and and Gordon and Tucker and Fareed. And you put that all together in the mix, they play well together.
They do. I definitely think so as well.
When I was reading your rankings, something really resonated about the Rudy Gobert, how he's like a top, what'd you say, he's a top something player in the regular
player?
season.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he's like not even a top 50 player in the playoffs.
Right.
Like he really just falls off the earth. He can't post anybody up.
No.
Never mind Clint Capella.
No.
And then he just gets lost defensively. He cannot run with these Rockets.
Well, you're
It's
seeing
awful.
that some of that type of center is not doing well in the playoffs consistently. You look at OKC. I mean, Steven Adams. All of a sudden, he's looking more like the type of center that you don't want in today's game.
Yeah.
And Gobert, he brings so much to the table defensively that you overlook that he's not bringing a modern game to the position either.
I'm beginning to think Adams is kind of a liability because he's paid so much.
Right. If you're not an offensive creator down low and you are that archetype of the rim protector first, and kind of just like if your offensive archetype is a lob threat, you need to be an athletic freak that can run the floor. Exactly. That's exactly what he is.
Siakam.
He's athletic who can run the floor. To be able to succeed and translate, you need to be able to hold your own on the perimeter, which everyone was talking about Gobert being better on the perimeter defensively than he was last season, but he's still horrible. So it's very interesting looking to see how that projects forward. It's interesting for prospects. There's a couple players in this draft coming up that are kind of that archetype in terms of a player. Maybe based off of what we're seeing more and more ring true in the playoffs, maybe these type of players are going to drop, and that skill set isn't going to be as valued.
I just hope they don't pick like a Rui Hachimura or something.
Yeah.
Somebody that's not going to improve.
Rockets, Warriors, what's your pick?
I think the Warriors are going to win everything again.
How many games?
6.
I'd say Warriors in 7. I think it's going to be a good series.
Warriors in 7. I agree. Spin it up. And OKC Portland. Last week, this looked like it was going to be the best series in the first round.
Yeah.
And even before
It's a fight.
even before last night's game, it looked like it was going to be the best series.
Even at halftime.
Yeah, I agree. But Portland brought one home back to Portland. They got a win in OKC after OKC fought from a 2-0 deficit to get their first victory of the series. So Portland leads 3-1. I believe they play on Wednesday, actually. So we could see Portland close it out at home. I wouldn't be surprised if OKC won another game and brought it back. Initially, I had picked OKC in 7. I think that we really underrated the camaraderie, the leadership of Lillard.
We picked the Blazers, didn't we? I know I picked the Blazers.
Yeah, I was with the Blazers too. I like
I
Cantor.
hate the Thunder.
Wow.
I am making my chump
Trump.
is Russell Westbrook because I hate him more and more every game that I watch. And then in the post-game press conference,
Yes, let's talk
I
about
don't know if you saw, but one of these reporters asked
I
him
know.
a serious question,
Yeah,
a
serious.
good question,
Good question.
and he looked over to Paul George. They whispered, "Should I answer him?" And then we're just whispering about the guy, and then he just acted like the guy didn't even ask the question.
Next
Just
question.
Next question. And then he asked another question.
Didn't George do the same thing?
Another valid question. And Russell Westbrook said, next question. And then they asked Paul George a question, and it was legitimate. Like, why did Paul George throw down a dunk when he shouldn't have, like, at the end of the game when the game was already decided, nobody's playing defense, and Paul George said, next question. First of all, if you're going to dunk the ball when the game's already decided as like a chump, own it. Like, own that afterwards.
Was it the same
Just say, like,
reporter?
I just wanted to put an exclamation mark or
was it the
something.
same guy asking the
I don't know if
questions?
it was the
Yeah,
same
the
guy.
same guy asked all three
It
questions.
was the same guy that asked Paul George?
Barry
I like the reporter's attitude that he's not backing off.
Yeah,
That,
and he
this
actually
is
wrote an
strong.
article because I guess Westbrook's been treating this guy like this for a while. Like, as a former reporter, I don't understand how an NBA player can just completely blow somebody off.
Yeah.
Like, the media is there to prolong your star, to do
what Adam Silver wants.
You do on the
to
court.
promote the brand of the NBA. Yes.
It's just so immature, and
And
I'm just so sick of these chumps.
And on top of it, I think the analysis of the series is that Westbrook is just not good enough. I mean, him and George both need a higher level of play if they're going to compete, if they're going to win a series like this.
George is banged
They're just
up.
not playing good
So
enough.
that rings true, and CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard have outplayed them so
They
far, and
have.
they're going to lose. But back to this, I think that the people that are on your side are the beat reporters and people sympathize with writers and all those people, and everyone is being way too sensitive. Who cares?
You don't
Who cares?
ignore.
He's not ignoring. He's answering the question. He's saying next question. He's saying your question stinks. That's a stinky
But his
question.
questions didn't stink.
Yes, they did. His question was, what happened in the third quarter for you getting the surge for 12-2 run? No one cares about that answer.
As
the
soon
same type of
as
question
he
they all-
started
That's a
talking,
typical question.
Westbrook was like,
Yes.
this guy.
Do you know why he doesn't like Barry Trimble? Because 5 years ago, Barry Trimble wrote like 15 articles just begrudging Russell Westbrook for being a bad teammate, bad leader, bad player on the court. He was disparaging
Rabbit
him.
ears. We've
Yeah.
seen them before.
And
Westbrook
think-
is a typical case.
I think that it's. I don't.
What would
He
it
is
be like in
everything.
Boston? Boston reporters are quite critical of people's games. You
Yes.
have to keep answering the question.
Yes, you have to ask the questions because that's their job, but they don't need to answer the questions if they don't want to. They can say next question. They could say Looney Tune things. They could start rambling. They can do whatever they want. I don't care about the content that comes out of that. The NBA has plenty of storylines, plenty of topics to carry them through any type of anything.
You don't think Westbrook sets a tone on
Westbrook
that
is a
team that is really
chump.
negative shade?
No, he absolutely does
You don't
not.
think he sets a
is-
bad tone?
No, he's
I
a
think Billy
fantastic
Donovan
leader.
sets a bad tone.
He's
and
a fantastic leader. His teammates love him. His teammates would die for him. I think that the fact that people are getting sensitive and calling him a chump and a bad person because he refuses to answer questions that are pretty irrelevant and are stock questions.
I didn't say he's a bad person. I just think he's immature and he's way too full of himself.
I think he could
can't
care
even
less.
hit a free throw with 4 minutes left in the game.
Yeah, that's fine. Let's talk about that. That makes more sense. But I think he could care less about questions that are irrelevant. You want him to answer with a stock answer. Oh, we tried hard. We fought hard. I missed some shots. We made some shots in that run. That's why we ended up here. That's why we won. You want him to repeat a bunch of regurgitate all the same words over and over again? I would rather him say no question.
He loves the questions when people are adoring him and he's playing amazing and he's winning. But
No, he
hates
doesn't.
the
He
questions.
said no questions when they praise him
Come
too.
on.
I think that this whole thing is so dramatic and it's aggravating so many people so much. It's hilarious. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to be there.
And
It's
neither does David Price. David Price doesn't care either. And it aggravates me.
It shouldn't aggravate you.
It does.
It shouldn't aggravate you.
I think that the NBA has a brand to promote. The fans are expecting to get to know these players. They're expecting to that's
we
what
know
it's all
him.
about.
Yes,
You know?
wait, so
They-
do you not
they-
know
they're
Russell
supposed to
Westbrook?
promote. They get
Does
paid
Russell-
they
does-
get paid multi-million dollars. The least they can do is promote their brand when in that situation, so that when the fans are watching them, that they're getting a good impression from the people. And
I agree.
next question
I
is
agree.
not giving a good impression.
I agree. Do you know how you promote a player's brand? You ask him questions about his brand. That's a good idea. Why don't you ask him about his shoes? That would be more interesting. I care more about
It's a post-game press conference. We're talking about
I
the
agree.
game.
Yeah, but
I
all that
also,
stuff is nonsense.
Shay,
The
I don't think
details
it's
and
an
the quotes
easy
that come out of press
job
conference
at the
don't
end of the
matter.
game to pose good questions to these players. It's something that has to happen. It's just like the coaches talking during the game and the coaches talking before. There's not a lot of substance you're going to get in those situations. You're kind of reaching for things. I never really hear
If not
great
for the
questions.
If not for the media, they wouldn't be as famous as they are. And yet, he just like spits in their faces and talks.
That's the only reason they have those press conferences.
Don't even.
Shay,
go
they
up
don't
there.
have those press conferences to give you knowledge of the game. They have those press conferences so that the fans, the rank and file out there, probably not us, that are watching, get a good impression impression of Russell Westbrook in the NBA. That's why they have
Are
him.
you sure it's a good impression, or is it just to?
That's why they come out. That's why they march those guys out there.
I don't think it's to get a good impression. We have plenty of exposure to Russell Westbrook as a brand, not including the post-game press conference where he doesn't need to answer questions to you learn more about him. Him being asked what led to that third quarter surge. Why did you do this in the fourth quarter? That's not telling you about Russell Westbrook.
So you've got a category up there of teams that need to be fixed. OKC's a team that needs to be fixed, and Russell Westbrook is part of the problem.
Okay, I
hate him.
I would get to that topic.
I don't hate him, but I think he's a problem.
Let's go to the fix me teams that need to be fixed.
Sure.
So only one team is technically out, and anything can happen in playoff basketball.
And it would certainly make me look bad if they come back and win the series.
Who knows? Utah can come back and win. The Detroit won't come back and win, but anything can happen. Pick a couple teams, and next year, if they want to be further along in the playoffs or to get to the championship or whatever framework that you're having to judge this team to be fixed, how do you fix these teams? What's your team to fix, and how do you fix them?
I'll start with OKC because that's where we are. I think they don't have a good winning environment on that team, and I think that Donovan sets this dour tone that's so serious and negative that it just you don't get it's not a fun group. You can say what you want about Westbrook. To me, it doesn't look like a fun group, and it comes from Donovan. I think it's time, and I've been on Billy Donovan's side so long, but there's a change there that's needed, and I really think, and it's starting to surface, you're starting to see more and more of it, that Patino's available. And if you follow, Patino, he's talking with Cleveland right now. You know that, you've seen that. He's talking with Cleveland right now. He's going to surface, he's going to have an NBA job next year with all these available. And I don't see any reason why Billy Donovan's a disciple of Patino. These players, they play okay for him. They accept Donovan. They don't rebel against him. I think Patino would be a good one. The other thing I would look at in that team is I would look at Westbrook's contract and Adams' contract. And if they're good contracts, I mean, Westbrook's in the third year of $200 million. Yes. Is he tradable under that contract? Is he somebody they need to change the environment there? So what can they get for Westbrook?
So I think that you're absolutely right. My number one thing for fixing the Thunder is absolutely fire Billy Donovan, number one. And in terms of thinking about the process of fixing a team, you need to put some monicum of awareness of what they will and won't do. So even if, yes, hypothetically, looking into Russell Westbrook trade options is a smart idea for the future of that franchise, they're not going to trade Russell Westbrook.
2 years in a row. It's 2 years in a row they failed.
They're not going to trade Russell Westbrook.
Well, how many? If they keep failing, they've got to eventually.
They're not going to trade him. They're not going to trade him. They're not trading him.
They're going to re-up on the end?
Yes.
They're going to go forward with him forever?
Yes. I think that they will. He means too much to that franchise. They're not going to trade him. The same reason if Portland lost,
never win a championship.
The same reason if Portland got swept in this series, they wouldn't be trading Damian Lillard. Is the same reason that OKC, when they lose this series, is not going to be trading Russell Westbrook. So you need to move on to the other option, even if that makes sense. You need to move on to the other option. You talked about Steven Adams. I agree. They should look around the league, make some phone calls, see what his interest is, because the biggest hole in this team continues to be shooting. And Steven Adams is a very successful type of big in a specific situation. And we talked about Gobert and how him as an archetype in the NBA is a failing transition to the postseason. So they need to look around. They need to find some shooting. The only positive shooter they have on their roster that plays heavy rotation minutes is Paul George. They need more shooting, preferably from the big spot. I think that they should look around. If a Mirotic type of a player is available, that should be a player that they're going after and hunting. We saw them try to sign a guy that in theory is a shooting big in Markieff Morris, but he's not healthy, he's out of shape, and he stinks. So I think that they really need to.
Tobias Harris might fit.
Yes, well they're not going to. They don't have enough money.
Tobias Harris is one of the most desirable guys out there.
I think that they should look into trading Steven Adams.
How are they going to unload Steven Adams? You know how much his contract is?
$25 million a year, and he's got 2 years left.
For a guy that can't score, and he's getting slower every year.
But he's still young. He doesn't deal with major injury concerns. He's a dominating regular season player.
I don't know about dominating.
He's very imposing. He's a fantastic defender.
You talk very highly about Steven Adams.
About
I've heard
him,
you
but
talk very highly about
he's
Steven Adams.
becoming
I like
a
Steven Adams
liability.
too.
He's not a $25 million player, unfortunately. And I don't think anybody's going to trade for him.
I think that his market would be strong. I think that he's worth it. Okay, move on to another team. What's a team that you would like to fix?
Oh, jeepers. Who are we going to fix?
Losing teams.
I got another team.
Okay, go for it. Yeah, shoot for it.
I think the team that's really got an opening to get better and better is the Nets. I mean, when you look at the contracts on that team, there's no reason they have to keep those 3 guards. So they
should trade
Dinwiddie,
one.
Russell, and LeVert.
Trade one.
They are very trade
one.
Trade one of those guys and bring in the wing player that they need to bring. And they're very desirable. I don't care whether they go to Phoenix or they go to Orlando, whatever it is. They should get a lot for one of those guards.
And they have good fans.
Yes.
Whereas I was talking about Orlando, kind of has
Yeah.
old, crappy fans.
Yes.
Brooklyn's got awesome fans.
They do.
They
That's
were really
electric.
turning
The
up.
environment
That
there was
series
good.
is
That game 4.
That series is electric.
We were
It's
talking
electric.
about
It's awesome.
not being surprised if there was going to be a ton of Philly fans there. There really weren't that many.
No.
The Brooklyn crowd really
they
owned
could
that.
beat 'em up.
I was surprised and I was expected by that. Excited about that.
That was a good fun
I
game.
agree with you. I think that they should look to trading for one of those 3. I think that the one that has the highest value and they could get the most in return is probably D'Angelo Russell,
Yep.
even though they probably will have to sign him before they can trade him. I think that they should look. I understand that they just made the playoffs and they're probably looking to continue that trend of postseason success and just in terms of a resume builder. But I think that maybe they should take a step back, get a big that's more imposing, a 4 that can score down low. We're seeing how that's an issue, how shallow they are at that position
Yes.
against certain teams. So a big and maybe another high draft pick, a top 10 pick, not necessarily in this draft. But I think that more bites at the apple, more swings. They don't need to succeed right now. They have a lot of young players that are promising. They have a coach and a culture that is fantastic. And I don't think that they need to go all out. I think that there's going to be a lot of murmurs this postseason of them going after Jimmy Butler, of them going after Tobias Harris, of them going after Klay Thompson, them going after the bigger name free agents. I think that's perfectly fine if they want to. But once they strike out, because I do think that it's likely, I think it's perfectly fine for them to maybe take a couple steps back, build up their asset arsenal, and hope to make a couple steps forward ahead of where they're way ahead of schedule. So I think that them really kicking the can down the road, getting more draft picks, still contending for playoffs, probably still making the playoffs if they trade D'Angelo Russell, what have you. I think that's the right path to take.
It's such a great market. I mean,
Yes, it's great.
It's desirable to these guys to play there, and that playoff.
We do it
environment
just
is great.
postseason teams? Or?
Yes, just postseason teams, the losing teams.
I want the Pacers to pick up another wing threat.
Wing threat.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because they got Oladipo.
How about a point guard moving Oladipo
and they've
up
got a
front?
good front court.
I got Utah and Indiana's.
What do you mean, like Kemba?
No, I got Utah and Indiana's fix
Something
me
like that.
is the same thing. Mike Conley. Mike Conley fixes Indiana and Utah. Their fix me
Yeah.
is the same person. It's Mike Conley. Mike Conley is absolutely getting traded next year.
Yeah.
They are 1,000% going to get him out of Memphis. His market is going to be very affordable as a player on the downturn of his NBA career, who has a little bit higher in terms of lucrative of a contract. So I think that he's going to be very gettable at a very affordable price. Both these teams need a steadying veteran presence who doesn't waver late in games and who can make good decisions. And I think that he would be a perfect fit for both of those franchises.
I
like
agree with
that.
that, and they need to add a wing player also. They got to replace
Which team?
Ingles and Crowder.
Ingles, I like Ingles. I think Ingles
I
is
know,
great.
but if you're looking to improve that team,
Crowder, yes.
You know,
Imagine if they could get Klay Thompson.
but nobody wants to
that'd
go
be
to Utah. I mean,
No,
Connolly would like to go, probably would go to Utah, but I don't think.
I don't think anybody wants to go to Indiana or Detroit either. These are not lofty.
That's probably true. A team like Brooklyn, they're going to go.
Detroit's fix me is probably the most bleak. I'm just get rid of Reggie Jackson.
Absolutely.
But what does that mean? That doesn't mean anything's coming back. I said trade Drummond because he's probably the only player with any value.
Well, if you could get Kemba or something like that, I don't know
Detroit's
what you
fix me is
It would
don't
really help
be
that team.
located in Detroit. Nobody wants to
Don't
be in that
continue to
city.
start Reggie Jackson. Okay, what other the teams? Let's try to fix every team. The Clippers.
every team.
Fix the Clippers. Fix the Clippers for me.
Well, I think
I
the
mean-
Clips are one of my teams that I would say are they're on the right track.
Sign a free agent. I mean, they got all this cap
really,
space now.
they're sitting there poised they're poised to one up the Lakers
Yes,
is what they're poised to
they're
do.
going to.
Yeah, I mean,
and
they
it's awesome if
they
they do
stole
that.
a game
you
from
know,
the
they get
Warriors.
the player that the Lakers can't get. You know, whoever it is. You know,
They could have stolen another game from the Warriors, but the Warriors are just too
Get the-
strong.
get
I
the-
mean, they were up by 6
the
in
front
that other
line free
game,
agent.
but then the
That's
Warriors
really
went
what
on
they
that
gotta
run.
I think that they should absolutely attempt to land a large free agent. I think it's likely to be Kawhi. Maybe if the Toronto Raptors make the finals, Kawhi would be likely to stay. But I think that they are in the driver's seat to land Kawhi. Something I'm nervous about this team, and I think they may take one swing too many, is I don't want them to ship off all of these assets that have popped up for them in a trade unless it's for Anthony Davis. But I don't think that they have the necessary pieces to do that. So I don't want them to package Shamet and Shea and these guys in a trade for a small upgrade. I want them to keep those guys. I think that they can develop there. They've showed to be great young leaders for this team that mesh well with Doc Rivers, that mesh well with Patrick Beverley, who will need to be re-signed, that mesh well with this just overall this franchise. I think that they should sign a Kawhi Leonard and then maybe look in the market for a fringe trade for another big that will work, that will be a little bit superior than Zubac.
It'd be interesting. It'd be interesting to see which player they zero in on, because I think they're going to try to keep that chemistry the same, just like you say, and keep that same core that they got there, and bring the right player in.
Okay. Let's close on
Tough to bottle that energy
Denver
out.
versus San Antonio Spurs. The only series that isn't going to be decided or essentially hasn't been decided.
It's the only toss-up.
It's a toss-up. I think it'll definitely be 7. It's a very entertaining series. We spoke on how fantastic start to finish Nikola Jokic has been. We spoke about Derek White's prominence, his come to action 26-point half, and his just start to finish dominant defensive performance. What are you seeing from this series moving forward? We got a game tomorrow. Who do you think is going to end up on top?
If I can go first, I think what we're seeing in a series is that Denver's got a tremendous upside.
Yeah.
And that what you saw in that game 1 is that they didn't really look ready to play in the playoffs, right?
No.
And that they didn't respond. But now, all of a sudden, they hit 15 out of 31 threes, and you got Murray going 24 and 6 with 3 out of 5 from threes. Jokic is playing steadily like an all-star. Mm-hmm. I think that team has got, as the more experience they get, if they can win the series, that they're a threat, because I think that their upside is huge. That's what I'm looking at in this series. It's still a toss-up, but I'd like to see Denver go forward.
I think in almost every facet of the game, they've answered the bell with the Spurs, because I think we knew that the Spurs were going to pose the biggest first round threat to any team that they faced, really.
And Sloan, how many years since Denver's beaten San Antonio? It's like 10 years.
No, it's more than that.
It's more since they've beaten San Antonio.
Yeah, I
so
think
that
it's
was
more
a
like
big
14
win
or 15
to go
or
that
something.
117-103 win after losing, but over a decade on that court.
Well, I mean, they were
seeing that
shooting
team
lights
improve.
out from three-point. They put up 33s. They made 15 of them. They were shooting lights out from the free throw line. They're getting to the free
They
throw line.
get some confidence.
They're
And Jokic is the
rebounding.
stabilizer on that team. He plays good.
I think that Malone did a good job adjusting their starting lineup, putting in Torrey Craig in exchange for Will Barton, who has been struggling immensely.
Where'd Craig come
was a
from?
really, really smart decision. Craig he's shooting better than he will for the remaining of the series in that game, but I think that he's a good answer, good adjustment. He defends DeRozan well, and he can defend most guard spots as well very prominently. I think that this Nuggets team, there's an answer in there in terms of a team that can be successful deep into the playoffs, and you can tell that they're figuring it out. And they're struggling, and they're going to fail one game, and they're going to succeed the next game, and that's what we've seen so far. And we've seen Murray struggle to adjust to the physicality, but then in the next game he kind of realizes it and gets hot and has a flurry. But then the game after that he goes back to being a little passive. I think it's just an up and down battle that they got to be really thankful for the consistency of Jokic, because if not for him, I think that they probably would have been down 3-1 at least by now in this series. And I think on the opposite side of the ball, DeRozan has played really well as a third best player on this team. I think that LaMarcus Aldridge, even though neutralized to a bit by Jokic, I think that he continues to be a steadying presence offensively. But I remain that Derek White's their best player. He's been their best player in every single game.
He's going to have to score more than 8 points, even though he played well defensively.
I know. Even in the game that he scored only 8 points where he was struggling offensively, he was still that team's best player. He was harping on Gary Harris. He was harping on, and that was one adjustment, again, that I thought that the Nuggets made that was great, switching Gary Harris to guard Derek White instead of guarding DeRozan, realizing that cutting the head off of the snake, this head of the snake being D. White, not being DeRozan.
I was telling Shay yesterday that there's a player that did not receive a college scholarship offer out of high school. No offers to college.
The thing with the Nuggets is, like, they give up 60 points a game on the interior.
Yes.
60 points a game in the paint. And maybe that's their strategy at this point against the Spurs. Let them score 60 because they can't score more than 30 or 40 on the perimeter.
Right.
So just, converge on them, on the perimeter and let them score their inside
Still like
points.
Popball. I still like watching.
Yeah, who you got in the series overall? Who do you think's going to take it?
I'm looking for the Nuggets to win and keep that home court advantage going to the next round. And I think they could be trouble.
Nuggets are
I've been
taking good
waffling
shots.
them.
They're taking care of the basketball. They're assisting on 30. They get 30 assists
Hey,
a game.
but
I'll
one
take
thing
the
with-
Nuggets in 6.
One thing with the series is the value of
two straight wins.
The value of
straight
that home
wins.
court advantage
I think they figured
is
them out.
Game 5. Game 5's the value of that home court advantage. You've seen it in all the 3-and-1s.
You're right. No, you're right.
And right now, and to have that Game 5 on your home court, nice.
I think that everything we're saying is going to be really exciting if Denver can get past the San Antonio team. We talked about first-round tests for the higher seed in terms of which best prepares you for the next round. I think you could see an even stronger and even more just demanding of attention Denver Nugget team in the second round.
That's what I'm saying.
I have them in 7 over the Spurs. I think that it is going to continue to be this back and forth battle, and I think that home court is going to be the differentiating factor. I just am very excited for the second round series where one of the teams, either Portland or one of these two teams, is going to be in the conference finals, which is really, really interesting to think about. It's kind of weird and a little lopsided in terms of what you would expect coming into the postseason. But at the end of the day, after this rocky road we've seen from Denver, wouldn't be surprised if they were the team at the end of the tunnel up against the Warriors. We'll see. Enjoy a playoff basketball. I don't know about the Bruins play tonight. They play tonight. Who knows? Go Bruins.
Red Sox can rain, though.
Okay, that's okay. Thank you for joining us for My Wheelhouse. Until next time.